Welcome back, beautiful tri-state area. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. We have the Scandals segment coming up, brought to you by Caldwell Soames. And today we're featuring our regular contributor, Imran Ansari of Aidala Bertuna Kamins, otherwise known as ABK Law, right here in New York City. He's also a regular contributor and legal analyst on Law and Crime and Court TV. Today, we're chatting about the biggest legal issues currently facing Donald Trump. Now, it's hard to keep track of Donald Trump's very busy legal docket. He launched his 2024 presidential bid, was indicted by a Manhattan grand jury, making him the first former White House occupant to face criminal charges. All in all, Trump is the subject of at least four major investigations into the alleged wrongdoing relating to his handling of White House documents, to election, the insurrection, and his finances. The Manhattan DA's indictment over the hush money settlement to Stormy Daniels, the Justice Department's investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 elections. Now, geez, sometimes even Donald Trump has a point. This time, it's his claim that he's been singled out by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for conduct that would probably not have been charged as a crime against anyone else. The indictment of the former president in New York is an undeniable historic event, actually, the first ever criminal prosecution of a former US president. And here to give us legal insight on if any of these will stick is the amazing Imran Ansari. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Thanks for having me, Zen.
Oh boy, let's start with the latest. Geez. So the Manhattan DA's indictment over the hush money settlement to Stormy Daniels. As we know, the parties are the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, and Donald Trump. The issues, just to recap here, is Bragg's office has been investigating whether Trump violated campaign finance laws in connection to hush money payments made to Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. And a grand jury voted to bring criminal charges against Trump in the case. Does this stick, Imran?
Well, we really have to see and analyze the evidence here. That's going to be the telling aspect of whether these charges are grounded on sufficient evidence, not only to survive this indictment, for this indictment to survive motions to dismiss, but also to carry it through to trial. Remember, an indictment is just a charge. The grand jury has found that there's reasonable cause to believe and sufficient evidence that a crime may have been committed. It doesn't mean that a crime has been committed. And Donald Trump enjoys the presumption of innocence until he's proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So this is just a preliminary, and there is a whole area of where the defense will be looking to attack these indictments leading up into an ultimate or possible trial of this matter. Do the charges stick? Well, it all depends on the evidence and whether the prosecution can prove these charges beyond a reasonable doubt. And of course, how the defense will attack these charges and if they will be successful.
Now, Michael Cohen is about the least credible witness, and he happens to be a key witness here. He's Trump's former fixer and personal lawyer. He's testified under oath that he made the payments to Daniels at Trump's direction and pleaded guilty to federal campaign finance violations in connection with the payments in 2018. Now, there's also no indication at the moment that the case against him has any real precedent here in New York or elsewhere, if you look at it from a bird's eye view. I mean, Trump, of course, is not the first president or presidential candidate to engage in an extramarital affair. I mean, Democrat John Edwards was indicted by federal prosecutors in connection with the scheme to obtain nearly $1 million in funds from donors to conceal a mistress and child while he ran for president in 2008. But the Justice Department was unable to convict him. Former President Bill Clinton famously had an affair while in the White House. Hard to believe that he would be criminally charged by a local prosecutor for that conduct, even if he were to have done it recently. So the charges relate to Trump's 2016 alleged hush money scandal, which we know that Alvin Bragg has been investigating for 5 years. So all of a sudden, this does feel somewhat like a witch hunt. And of course, at this point right now, it's all up in the air. Who's to say what's really going to happen? I want to move on to Letitia James. So Letitia James, Imran, The New York Attorney General here is leading a civil investigation, which, of course, we have to point out cannot result in criminal charges. And she has spent years looking at whether the Trump company committed, various acts of fraud over several decades. And in the civil case, she has filed a lawsuit against Trump and three of his children, accusing them of astounding fraud and deception. The lawsuit alleges that the family inflated their net worth by billions, and she's seeking 250 million that was allegedly obtained through fraudulent means. She's also seeking bans on Trump and his children from serving in a leadership role in New York businesses. Does this really affect Donald, and does she prevail?
So, Zen, what is really interesting about this civil suit brought by the Attorney General Letitia James in her office against Trump is that it's going to come likely to a grinding halt now that Donald Trump has been criminally charged under this indictment. Now, a civil case tends to yield to a criminal case. When there is a criminal defendant, typically the court will stay the civil matter because that defendant enjoys the right to remain silent. And if there's any chance or any possibility that the criminal defendant is going to have to be compelled to testify in a civil matter and that their right to remain silent and not incriminate themselves is jeopardized, then typically the court's going to stop that civil action, allow the criminal case to play out, and put that on the back burner. I expect that's going to happen now to Letitia James, her office's civil suit based on fraud against Trump, that is going to have to yield to that criminal case. But it's indicative of how these prosecutors, and of course this is a civil case, but Letitia James is the highest state prosecutor in New York State, are looking at the Trump family, the Trump organization, and really looking to pick apart things and seek charges against them, whether it be civilly or criminally. And it's just this whole tale of woe, of legal trouble for the Trump organization, Donald Trump, and his family. But it's going to be interesting to see how this criminal charge plays out because, as we talked about, this is a charge which is brought by Alvin Bragg as DA, but Cy Vance went out there and publicly stated that he didn't bring charges, and he could have brought these charges when he was the DA, but he yielded to the Southern District as they did their own investigation, but didn't bring charges against Donald Trump at that time. And also, arguably, Zen, there were more serious charges that Donald Trump could have, arguably, theoretically, been brought up against, up on, other than these charges related to these alleged hush payments, but those weren't sought. And of course, there was an ADA, Mark Pomerantz, who left the office in frustration at Alvin Bragg for not pursuing those charges. So you have all these things playing out, Zen, but really what's going to take precedent now is this criminal case down in 100 Center Street in Lower Manhattan.
This guy's got more problems than a math book. Geez Louise. Now, the Justice Department's investigation into the handling of classified documents. Let's talk about that. So the FBI, of course, searched Trump's estate in South Florida, Mar-a-Lago, back in August as part of an investigation into the possible mishandling of government records, including classified documents. And Trump and his lawyers alleged prosecutorial misconduct and condemned the search as politically motivated. He has offered shifting defenses, which have mostly hinged on the argument that he declassified the material. Now, of course, we know that our current president, Joe Biden, had gotten stuck in the same crossfire with declassified material and classified material being mishandled as well. Where does this stand for Trump?
So I think that this DOJ is a federal investigation now, right, into the material that Trump arguably should not have possessed when he was outside of office. This confidential classified material that the Library of Congress was trying to get back, but and the National Archives, I should say, and he was going to cooperate, or seemed like he was cooperating, but then it didn't happen. But that's a big question mark, and I think it's really going to be something which is not going to be so substantial now that there's these criminal charges that he's facing. And again, there's a lot of argument to say that these criminal charges are going to be, something that once the evidence comes out, not anything to really worry about. Of course, it's an indictment, but we have to see the evidence. And ultimately, a lot of people are saying this is going to backfire on Alvin Bragg and the supporters of bringing these criminal charges against Donald Trump. But the DOJ and their investigation into these classified documents, I think that's going to sort of take a second sort of
A
role.
backseat. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah,
because
because
now, and you see, like you mentioned, Biden has been found to be in possession of these classified documents or classified documents himself. So now, you got two people, sort of two presidents who have this material. I think it's going to cancel itself out in many ways, or both of them could be in trouble. But I think the document aspect of things is really the least of Donald Trump's worries at this point, and also the least strong of any sort of prosecution, if any of them have any strength, that's brought against him.
Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, we have about 2 minutes left. Let's talk about the Justice Department's investigation into efforts to overturn the 2020 election. So, federal investigators are scrutinizing, of course, the role Trump and his allies played in the effort to overturn the 2020 election. Now, we know that the Justice Department is facing pressure to prosecute following a string of congressional hearings that connected Trump to the violence of January 6th in 2021. Now, he's denied responsibility for the riot and criticized the congressional committee, which he describes as a kangaroo court and unselect pseudo committee. How serious is this, or is this also taking a second backseat?
Well, Zen, I actually think that this potential federal charge in stemming from Georgia, and also there's also state possible charges in Georgia, could be something that is arguably more serious than what we're seeing here in New York. Of course, federal crimes tend to have stiffer penalties. They tend to be more serious of crime. So if there is a arguable federal crime that has been violated here, and if the prosecutors for the DOJ are able to establish that sort of election based crime against Donald Trump, then that could be more of a problem than what we're seeing up here in New York City and Manhattan, just based on the seriousness of federal crimes and stiffer penalties and sentencing, etc. And that is, of course, if the DOJ is able to bring a viable case based on that. Right now, we just know it's investigations and potential grand jury action at some point, but we don't know for sure. Now, then there's the state case in Georgia, and that also deals with issues from the 2020 election. And this just adds to the pot here. It seems like all people are trying to get Donald Trump on some sort of legal charge. But if you have that sort of action, you better hope and make sure that the legal case you have against the president in this unprecedented sort of situation here with a former president being brought up on criminal charges, you better make sure you have a strong case, because if you don't, it's really going to backfire on Donald Trump's detractors. And if there is a politically motivated prosecution here and that's established, that's going to have really horrible precedent for us as a country, no matter if you're a Democrat or Republican.
Oh, yeah.
You don't want a politically motivated prosecution. That's not what prosecutors do. That's not how the law is supposed to be applied. You don't want to weaponize that. So if that's established, then, we're going to have a lot of problems. And I'm talking about us collectively as a country.
Well, the problems are already arising because we did see, and we are seeing it firsthand, that this is weaponization, political weaponization. And it sure does feel like a witch hunt, because a lot of these cases brought against Trump don't feel very strong. In fact, they feel like a lot of fluff, and that if it was to his point and to his spokespeople's point, if this was the average person, they would not be prosecuted or indicted. And you have to remember, it's already backfiring. In the 24 to 48 hours after Trump's indictment, his campaign saw $5 million in donations. So obviously people are feeling empathetic towards him, and his rhetoric of this is a witch hunt is proving to be exactly that. So I can't wait to see how this unfolds. But wow, this is another reality TV show playing out right in front of our eyes. And of course, the Donald is at the center of it all. Imran, thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure.
Zen, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You guys have to Check out my amazing friend Imran Ansari. That was the Scandal segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames. Check out Imran at Aidala Bertuna Kamins, otherwise known as ABK Law. You can head directly to their website at idalalaw.com, or you could check out Imran on the gram at Imran Ansari Esq. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.